Sometimes we get a nice garden variety thunderstorm. A little bit of lightning, some rolls of thunder, some beneficial rain, maybe hitting against the window or taking care of the yard or the garden. But as we've seen, some of these thunderstorms turn very ugly. Take, for instance, the hailstorm that hit us April 7th of last year. We got slammed with baseball-sized hail, putting holes into roofs of homes, smashing all kinds of car windows around the Quad Cities, too. Now, Local 4 meteorologist Zane Satchery is back to explain how hail forms and why it gets so big sometimes and what makes it so dangerous to life and property.
Andy, last April's hailstorms caused nearly $3 billion in damage here in the Quad Cities and in other parts of the Midwest just in one night. Now, as nasty as hail is, the process to form a hailstone isn't that complex. Everything starts when water droplets form around dust and other particles. Strong thunderstorms then lift these small droplets up high into the clouds. Now, this high up, the air is very cold, so it freezes our droplets into these small hailstones. Now, these small hailstones are then tossed up, down, and around inside the storm's strong winds, growing as other liquid drops freeze onto their surface. This continues then until the stone is too heavy to be held up by the storm's updraft, and then it falls down to earth and eventually reaches the ground. Now, not all hail that falls is large and dangerous. This chart we have here illustrates various sizes of hail and common objects for comparison. Hail isn't considered severe unless it's one of those sizes you see in red there, at least 1 inch in diameter, or at least the size of a quarter. Now, when hail gets too big, that big, it can do some damage. Think about this, for example. A 1-inch hailstone falling thousands of feet can reach the ground at a speed of up to 40 miles per hour. A 2-inch hailstone can reach 70 miles per hour on its way down. The biggest hailstones on the side of your screen can reach 100 miles per hour. Picture a major league pitcher throwing a fastball right at you, and you'll have a decent idea of what that would feel like. Thankfully, hail that large is fairly rare, and so are deaths from hail. There hasn't been one in the U.S. in over a decade. Why? Because it's pretty simple to stay safe from hail. You protect your head, you get inside, if you're not already inside some sort of shelter, and you stay away from windows. Glass is a whole lot easier to fix than your skull is. Andy?
Okay, it's not just hail that comes from thunderstorms that can cause a lot of damage. Lightning strikes can also be fatal and very dangerous. Downbursts, you may know them as straight line winds that we talk about, microbursts. These are also intense winds that come from rain clouds and thunderstorms. We've had a lot of experience with this one lately, including again the derecho from last year. Here's Local 4 meteorologist Garrett Hyde with more on these winds.
Yeah, Andy, on top of both tornadoes and hail, very common things we deal with in severe weather is going to be those straight line winds and lightning. Firstly, we'll start off with the straight line winds. Typically, actually, they come from either what's known as a microburst or a downburst. And these are typically caused when rising air cools through a process known as evaporative cooling. That'll then move its way down to the ground, accelerate at about 150 miles per hour, which will likely cause a good amount of damage. It's always a good idea to treat this very similar to you would in a tornado scenario. Make sure to get into the lower portions of your home. A storm shelter as well, not a bad idea. Mobile homes, typically not the safest place to be. Get into a storm shelter if you can. But otherwise, if shelter is not available, avoid any kinds of trees or power lines, as those could fall over and cause damage as well. And on top of that, lightning being a big area of concern with that as well. So this is typically how lightning occurs, why it is so dangerous. Those positive electrons at the surface will meet with the negative electrons in the cloud. That'll form that cloud to ground strike. Keep in mind, this occurs in less than a second, traveling at about 60,000 miles every second. So they move fast and can move pretty far as well. Cloud to ground lightning can travel up to around 10 to 12 miles away, taking on average the lives of about 27 people each year. But of those lightning related injuries, about a third are actually occurring with people inside. So during a thunderstorm while you're indoors, it's always a good idea to avoid windows, plumbing, and corded electronics, because those cloud to ground lightning strikes can travel through the plumbing systems in your home and give you a good shock as well. But if you are caught outside, it's always a good idea to know when thunder roars, go indoors.